Welcome, everybody, to the February meeting of the National Society of IT Service Providers. We have over 330 people registered today, and we're going to go at least 60 minutes. And if we have a good discussion and good questions, we can go longer if we need to. We have over 100 people logged on already. I would ask you to, mute yourself unless we're at the question and discussion area. Encourage you to put things in chat, and Nai is in the other office, and she's going to post up some links as they are necessary or useful, including our agenda and so forth. And feel free to also have a side conversation there. It will be posted, just so you know, so be careful what you say. If you do not wish to be recorded, do not turn on your camera. If you don't wish your audio to be recorded, don't turn on your microphone. So this meeting will be posted on the site as usual. And we will get to some of the social media stuff that we're doing a little bit later. But our goal here today is to give you a big update on all the massive activity that's been going on, and encourage a little bit of involvement and some steps about going forward. So with that, let me introduce Amy Babinchak, who is the chair or president, president of the board of directors. And she has been working very, very hard to, as have the entire board, to really push things forward. And so, Amy, take it away at your leisure.
All right, let me get my screen shared. Righty, so I'm really excited to see this group growing. To double the registered attendees for this meeting shows a level of concern and commitment to the industry that you all have. And I want to thank you for being here and taking the time out from your day. It really does mean something. Many are still unsure what we're all about. So this organization has two co-equal items at its core. The first is to raise the level of professionalism in our industry. And just yesterday, I read in a group where a call was received, and long story short, the potential client was found to have a critical database application running on a Pi device. The business didn't know what the Pi was, and so they threw it out because they thought it was a broken cell phone charger. So we can't save everyone from themselves, but we can agree that it's not professional to install a critical application on a Pi and leave it on someone's desk. Right? We need to raise the level of professionalism so that businesses consuming our services can tell the difference between the trunk slammer and the professional and make an informed decision on which to choose. We are not interested in making it more difficult for people to get into this business, but defining what will denote professionalism in our industry is one of our charges. At the same time, our industry is a huge looming problem at all levels of government. At this point, all 50 states have enacted data privacy rules, and several have cyber crime laws, and most are taking up cyber topics in huge numbers. On the good news front, we are now known as being critical to the functioning of the economy. During the pandemic, we were put into the essential bucket. Now, more businesses know the acronym of MSP, but as ransoms have risen and organized crime has taken up arms against our clients and against us, the regulators and legislators are looking around and wondering who we really are. Is there a degree that makes us qualified? No. Is there a qualifying exam? No. So if we aren't degreed professionals, are we a trade? Is there a governing body of any sort? Not yet. But it will be the NSITSP if we can build it fast enough. And if we can get organized enough to represent ourselves. If we don't, then they'll make the rules in a vacuum, or worse, by the advice of the largest firms, and that won't be good for anyone. Representing ourselves everywhere that legislation and regulation is being considered is the second of our main charges. Together, these two things are the reason for this organization and the big topics that everything we do is working toward supporting. For the board's part, we've put a huge amount of time on working on professionalism this past quarter. We've defined the mission of this organization, the vision and the values, And these aren't just words going onto a website or engraved onto a plaque hanging on a wall. These are the words that this organization is going to use when making decisions going forward. And we are very fortunate to have Larry Mandelberg guide us through the process of creating these guiding lights. Larry is going to reveal to you shortly just what those words are. But our next charge is to work on coming up with a code of ethics, not only for ourselves, but for our industry as a whole. We're looking for volunteers that are passionate about ethical standards to join us in that effort. All other professions have code of ethics that everyone working in that industry is held to. It's time for us to do the same. You'll hear more about this opportunity for you to get involved in creating that code of ethics from Karl. The development of the code of ethics is going to take much of our time for the next quarter. The rest of our job on the board is revolved around enabling productivity in the committees, of which we have a bunch now. The committee members continue to impress me with their dedication to the task and their level of expertise. We help them in a variety of ways, which includes getting fully populated by providing Heather as a conflict resolution expert and board liaison, and by responding to and approving their requests in a timely manner. Heather's going to tell us more about what each committee has been working on as accomplished since our last membership meeting. She might also have some calls for volunteers. These committees are so important to our organization because at this point, they're not only responsible for setting the direction and building the process for the areas under their charge, but they also have to implement it too. It's a huge task, but many hands make light work. As a committee-driven organization, it is the committees that are responsible for implementing everything this organization is going to do and be for its members. Well, that's it for my board update. Back to you, Karl.
All right, thank you very much. I have to just say, as a side note and an apology, I was wrong. Our capacity was 100, and Kara is looking into increasing that. So with luck, she'll be able to do that live while we're here. So I have a few announcements that I want to go through for folks. And the first one is, if you are not receiving our newsletter, please get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that we get to it, and somebody will help you figure out how to whitelist it and so forth. It comes from NSITSP.org, but it's through Constant Contact. So just so you know that. Big announcement. So we only have 2 days left. We've been posting into the newsletter, but we have an opening on the board of directors. And so we would like to fill that. And so I'm going to have Nye put the link in the chat, but it's also, if you go to our website and look at leadership, there's a place there. So if you just go to nsitsp.org/leadership, there's a link there. There's also one in the news area. And I encourage people to look at that news area, because that's where we post up things like announcements for this meeting, but also when we are in the news or when we have graphics that we want to share. We have a lot of people who helped us get this meeting registration to 3:30. And so we want to thank all those people who did that, but also encourage more people to participate. I also want to encourage everybody to be a professional member, which means sort of stepping up. It costs $100, which the board has decided is a very, very low bar to let people in. And that's $100 and then 2 letters of reference. And I know some people have questioned what's the point of all of the letters of reference. And basically, you should be able, after many years in business, to find 2 clients who will say something nice about you. And that's sort of a minimal standard for professionalism. Other announcements, I want to make sure that we all are, headed in the right direction. And so, one of the things the board has done is come up with vision, mission, and values. And Larry's going to talk about what we came up with and what it means for our organization and for the industry as a whole. So I encourage you to follow the news and also to check us out on social media. I'll repost it from time to time, but there is one of the news items there is a list of our social media links on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so forth. So we encourage you to share those things. And whenever you're at a professional meeting, please share the news about us, tell people about us. I have ordered some business cards that are basically little advertisements for the NSITSP. And so if you want some of those to distribute, send me an email with your address and so forth, and I will send you some of them so that if you wish to hand them out, they basically, have a QR code and they say, join the organization. But it's something that people can take home with them so that they might then check us out and join. So with that, I encourage you to spread the word. And, we've been super, super busy. Heather's going to talk about the busyness of the last several months, and Larry's going to talk about the future. So with that, let me throw it back to Amy and Heather, and they're going to give you the report on what we've been doing so far.
Sure. So I am Heather Johnson. I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of GoZinta, and I'm also the vice president and committee liaison of the NSITSP. What it means to be a committee liaison is that I have the privilege of being able to go to all of the committee meetings without a vote, but they do listen to me, and that's lovely. But also I get to learn a lot from them. Currently, we have 5 committees that have been formed. They are the Formation, Legislative, Finance, Membership, and Marketing. We are a ground-up organization, so these committees, we really, really rely on them on the board to help us and guide us in these decisions. The Formation Committee has been working hard in this past quarter to provide the general guidelines for our committees and have supplied guidelines on what they see each committee doing. So it's the general guidelines for how people behave on committees, how elections are done, and then also what are those charges that they see during these formation stages of the organizations that the committees will be doing. The Legislative Committee has been really working this quarter on making the tools that are needed to talk to your legislature to be accessible. They've been talking about how MSPs are in a prime position and have the skills already within them to talk to legislature. Government is approachable, and we can make the changes that we need to do that. Of course, education in that is really important. So they've been making guides and videos to be able to guide MSPs on this process within their own state so they can take charge of what needs to be done so that we have a voice in government. For the Finance Committee, they have the difficult task of figuring out what we need as far as our finances to support the endeavors and dreams and what we want to get done. Why this is so difficult is that we have to collect all of those hopes and dreams and plans from all of the committees and figure out how much is going to be to make those happen and how we're going to pay for it, which is a difficult task on its own. Membership and Marketing Committee are our 2 newest committees and have done an excellent job, obviously getting the word out to 330 people to be here. And right now they're planning upcoming membership drives to get more people excited and charged up about what we're doing. We have been noticing lots of overlap between the conversations within the committees, and to avoid siloing, because that can really be a struggle for an organization, the committee chairs will be meeting for the first time on this Friday and in the future to have conversations about some of the difficult conversations that they're getting stuck on to see if they can work those out together. It has been an absolute pleasure working with these committees. I've worked with many committees in the past and have had some very painful experiences on committees, and I'm sure many of you can relate to that, where you just couldn't move forward or get anything done. There was an incident in particular where there was a 2-hour meeting deciding on whether to get sausage links or patties. And then it was continued to the next meeting, decide which grocery store to go to. And obviously this is not what is happening here. Every committee is filled with such experienced people that while they understand the urgency of what we are trying to do, is trying to examine each decision to see how it will impact the organization in the short term and the long term. Not one of these committees has backed down from a complicated decision and looking at it from all angles. These beginning decisions are the most important for what this organization becomes, and not one person is taking it lightly. Most committees are still working weekly because they realize they need to move at a quick pace in the beginning and take the time to not back down from a decision and make those decisions very, very deliberately. The dedication is so amazing, and I thank each and every member. I've learned so much from this experience and can't wait to see what the committees will do over the next quarter. And I will send it back to Karl.
Okay, sorry about that.
No.
So I have on my list that Amy's going to introduce Larry, but that's okay. I will introduce Larry. So Larry Mandelberg is on the board of directors, and he has helped guide us through the process of coming up with the mission, vision, and values. And so with that, Larry, why don't you go ahead and share your screen, and we'll walk through this, and then we'll have discussion at the end. And we can't hear you.
That must be what that mute button is for. Believe it or not, I've owned 3 IT companies. I bought my first computer in 1973, so I've been doing this for a little while. I'm the author of a book called Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide. How to survive your company's success and thrive in good times and bad. One of the things that my 23 years of research uncovered was that most startups and early stage organizations fail because of a lack of clarity of purpose. Clarity of purpose can mean many different things depending upon each individual's background and experiences. To create this clarity of purpose for the NSITSP, the board had to agree on some standards of meaning. Once we had alignment on what we were creating, we invested just under 40 man hours between October 12th and December 27th last year to create these purpose statements. One of the things I noticed on the announcements for the member meeting today emphasized our desire to increase professionalism in our industry. Amy also talked about professionalism and the links to legislation and regulation. There are 2 equally important guideposts that we as a board wanted to adhere to. Transparency among leadership, and that we will be a member-driven organization. That is you. And to that end, on December 27th, when we approved these draft purpose statements, which I'm going to share to you momentarily, we agreed that they would be presented to the membership for review and feedback and ultimately approval. This is your organization, not ours. So to help with that process, I'm going to show you the standards we used in creating these purpose statements, then what we created. This information will be available for your review over the next 6 months if you're interested. So I want to begin with our values. So again, this is what we use to guide our development. The value statements are the bricks we use to build our culture. And that helps to clarify, but without actually putting it into action, it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard people say, you got to have a purpose statement. You got to have a mission statement. Why? Who cares? So what? It's a bunch of soft crap that nobody really does anything with. Well, I know that doesn't have to be true. So here's how these things actually apply. First of all, our values help us make decisions. If there are 2 equally good choices, does one option better align with our values than another? And by having these written value statements, it allows us to go to the members and say, we made this decision because it was in alignment with this value. It's a very practical, on the ground way to apply value statements. Another is that it describes what it feels like to work for or with your organization. Another reason, another way to implement them is they should describe what you want your customers to say about you and why you do business with them. So our value statements represent what we want you to think about us, and what we want you to know that we're trying to do for you and for our industry. So let's look at the value statements we came up with. Oh, they often reflect the core beliefs of the founders. Sorry. So value statements. The first one, which shouldn't be a surprise, the professionalism and integrity of our industry are our passion. Now, I want to reinforce, I'm not going to keep doing this, but I do want to say one more time, these are for you. So don't feel like anyone's shoving these down your throat. We want you to look at these and live with them for 6 months, and then we'll revisit them. The second one, communication is the cornerstone of our integrity. It supports our desire to be transparent and to provide a mechanism for member-driven guidance. The third is we choose to communicate openly and honestly. Our clients and colleagues always deserve the truth. Number 4, we embrace change and education as the foundation of our industry. Technology is one of the few industries where the change is so rapid and so constant that if we get bogged down in the past, we get left behind very, very quickly. We all know that. We all know how important education and staying on top of it is. We are devoted to operating a highly successful member-driven organization. Now, I'll let those sink in for a moment. When I say that when I'm finished here, we'll have plenty of time for open discussion about these or anything else you want to talk about. And the board is going to be keenly interested in your feedback for the next 6 months. We want you to be able to be comfortable with these and to embrace them. So let's talk about the vision statement. What is a vision statement? A vision statement is an internally focused commitment to staff and internal stakeholders, that's each of you who are professional members, that describes our long-term goals and gives meaning to our existence. What is it we want to become? One of the things I tell my clients frequently when they come to me, they say, we need to do a strategic plan. And I say, what's your vision? Now, we don't have a vision. Well, if you don't have a vision, what are you strategically planning to achieve? How can you create a strategic plan to get someplace you don't know exists? So here's our vision statement. No, here's how we apply the vision statement. Something big that we want to accomplish, how we will be perceived by others in the future, and what is a better place that every member of the organization can emotionally embrace and contribute to achieving, and something that we want to be striving for that's bigger than one individual, especially in tough times. If there isn't a better reason to be a member-driven organization, I don't know what it is. So here's the vision statement. NSITSP is the voice of the industry, defining the standards for professionalism in IT services. I'm going to pause for just a moment. The voice of the industry defining the standards for professionalism. So let's talk about the mission statement. What is a mission statement? The vision's internally focused and the values are how we create culture and make decisions. The mission is externally focused. It's our commitment to prospects and customers that answers the question, what's in it for me? And in this environment, I personally believe that you, the members, not only serve as internal stakeholders, but also as external customers. We exist for you. We deliver value to you. So how do you put a mission statement into practice? It should define who you serve. It should define the value you deliver, and it should describe how that value is delivered to those markets. When you break it down like this, it's pretty simple. Now, the mission statements I've been involved with, including ours in NSITSPs, tend to be a little long. And I know I've had a lot of conversations with people about whether or not there should be a limit to the number of words in a mission statement. Personally, I don't believe a mission statement needs to be short so that it can be memorized. I think a mission statement needs to be good and so compelling that people memorize it no matter how long it is. It's better to have a good mission statement that you can follow than a short one that isn't clear. So what's our mission statement? The NSITSP provides pathways to establish high standards in ethics and to improve the perception and credibility of the IT profession through actions driven by member engagement. I'll read that again. The value we deliver is we provide pathways to develop high standards in ethics and to improve the perception and credibility of the IT profession. And the way we do it is through actions driven by member engagement. And the community we're talking to, again, is the IT profession. I'll just give that about 10 seconds for you to digest. So we're doing very good on time. And here is a summary slide with the vision, the mission, and the values. And I want to remind you that we have the rest of our time for Q&A. We can talk about anything we've talked about today or something we haven't talked about, but it's very important to the board and me that we share these with you and that you give us your honest feedback. We will not take it personally. This is for us and you. And this is how we see the NSITSP moving forward into a very successful future. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Karl.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with the comments from Steve in the chat that this was great work. And the core mission statement is already on the website under the About, but we will be posting up all of this information, the slides that, the slide decks that Larry had, so that everybody has it and everybody shares it. Are there any comments or questions, first of all, from Amy, but after that, from anybody else as we move forward?
I don't have any specific questions. I do want to say that, coming up with these mission, vision, and value statements, I've never been through that process before. It was far more involved and detailed, and we agonized over every word in trying to create this for the organization, because we do view it as the standards at which we're going to measure future decisions against. So, Larry mentioned that we did put a 6-month timeline on this to look at it, to try to use it in our decision making, and to give you all a chance to sort of, to give all of us a chance to sort of embrace it. And then in 6 months' time, we'll revisit it, refine it, do what we need to do, and at that point, make it more permanent. But it was something, I feel it's something, very, very important that we did to our foundation of this organization and ability to drive it forward from here.
I agree. And, you know, it's funny when we first started out, it's like there's a million things to do, and we've got to create this committee to do one thing and this committee to do another thing. I was using the analogy then of, you know, it takes a whole bunch of us pushing to get one railroad car to start moving. Now I'm going to change, and I want to use the analogy of we're building an airplane while it's flying. So, you know, the mission statement, the vision, I think that what we have is amazing, and we're going to live it for a while. But we're also a living organization and a membership focused organization. So, you know, if something obviously needs to be added or changed, we'll be happy to do that. So Jeremy asked the question, says this sort of organization is good and necessary, but he's wondering specifically what legislation prompted this. And I would say, so one of the things on the website is there's a link to the 9 pillars document that I wrote kind of as a manifesto to get all of this started. And if you haven't read that, I encourage you to read that. It is a little bit long, it's 20 pages or something. And but it lays out the problems of our industry with regard to insurance, ransomware, you know, the issues that we're facing, including several bad actors who are just not giving our industry a good name. And so what we see is that legislation is coming. You know, Amy mentioned every state has at least one committee in their legislature dealing with cybersecurity. Those committees don't exist to not make legislation, right? So we will be regulated. And when it comes to cybersecurity and especially IT companies having contracts with their clients, that's a state level activity in the United States. That is not a federal thing. The feds basically don't get involved with contracts between two organizations, or very rarely. So it has to be a state by state movement. So what part of what the legislative committee, Dennis and Keith and their team, what they're doing is beginning to monitor legislation, beginning to keep our ears open. At the same time, you know, trying to figure out, okay, where do we stand? What exactly would we like the government to do? Because you can't stop the legislation from coming. That's not the option. The option is, can we affect it as it takes form? Can we help create model legislation in the larger states, which then gets copied to other states? So there's a marketing committee that's going to work with this. There's a legislative committee. You know, there's a lot of people who need to come together on this. And so there's many layers of volunteers that are needed.
There is a question in there asking on this topic, what was the specific legislation that prompted the creation of this group? And I don't think there was one specific item. I gave a small talk on the beginning formation of our organization, and that we have a recording of that, and we're going to get that posted up. And in there, I do talk about what the different states were doing. And one important thing that came out was that CISA, which is federal regulation, they started coming forward and producing documents for small business, telling them that they need to protect themselves from MSPs, which means that we have a serious reputation problem out there. And so that's, you know, so it's not just the regulation. It is about the professionalism, the perception of our industry. It's a big encompassing thing that results in our need to form an organization like this so that we can represent ourselves properly in legislation, but also just to the marketplace in general.
And as Tracy noted, you know, the state of Louisiana does have some actual legislation. Luckily, for most of us, it has to do with MSPs supporting state agencies and cities. And so, you know, but that's the first thing that got out there. And they define MSP and MSSP, but they don't do a very good job of it. And so I pray that it does not become model legislation in this area. Todd says, do we have actual bad actors in unethical people in this industry? And he says he hasn't seen them in Seattle. I am grateful that you have not seen them in Seattle. I can tell you, I see them all the time, not just in Sacramento, but all over. There are people who lie, literally flat out lie to their clients about what they're offering, and the classic example for me is, oh, you can have unlimited support for $25 a desktop. No, you can't. We all know you can't. So, you can make those statements, or there are people who put all kinds of stuff in their contracts. There are people who register client software and hardware in their own name, don't give clients their passwords, sell used equipment as new. There's lots of reasons why CISA is warning people to be careful of MSPs. Their specific concern is that MSPs, and that Federal Trade Commission is looking into this as well. MSPs sell things that they don't deliver. They say they're managing everything, but they're not. They're taking a flat fee and they're not delivering the services. They're not maintaining the systems. So I would consider those non-professional activities. It's really hard, and that's why there's a task force on ethics. It's hard to convert that into, what does that look like day to day? What can you say this is a behavior we want and this is a behavior we don't want? That is never an easy thing to do. So that's that. So next question is, where should new members find openings in the committees to volunteer? Should people reach out to committee chairs directly? Yes, you can reach out to the committee chairs on the nsitsp.org/leadership page. There is a form for volunteering for committees. And I apologize that not everybody has been contacted or been able to serve on a committee. But we also have the case where some committees looked and said, well, let's take everybody who chose us as their first option. And forms are kind of a blunt instrument, because if there are people who chose something as a third option, that they would have been happy to also serve it as a first option. So, we're constantly going through those forms and distributing them to the committee chairs when they're looking for volunteers. So that would be the place to still continue to go. If you want to contact a committee specifically, you're welcome to do that. One of the things that we've done in the bylaws is that eventually, and we hope in September, we will have elections, and after that, all the committees will be filled by election. But one of the rules that we have established is that if a committee has a vacancy, the committee can fill that vacancy, and that person will serve until the next election. So in kind of the get going stage, the building the airplane as we're flying stage, committees are now filling up their membership until they have at least 7 to 9 committee members who will serve until the next election. And excuse me, I would say the work that's been done by the committees is truly phenomenal. And if you go to the minutes, there's actually a meeting minutes area on the website. You can see the minutes that are posted of the activities that all of the committees are taking place. So that's a place to start. All right. Any other questions that popped out at you, Amy? I'm just going to kind of read through these. It's hard for me to talk and read at the same time.
There were quite a few examples of unethical business practices that were thrown in there for the people that haven't seen them before. So if you're reading through the Q&A, through the chat, you'll see those too. There was an important question from both Larry and Lynn about whether this organization is only for MSPs. And the answer to that is no, it's not only for MSPs. That's why we didn't put MSP in the name of the organization. It is IT service providers. So however your organization provides service to businesses, you are, it doesn't matter. You're part of this organization, you're part of this industry. MSP has really sort of become that generic catch-all now for people that are in this industry. I don't tie it to a specific model of business, but
Yeah, and actually, one of the reasons why the name is National Society of IT Service Providers and not MSPs is that, you know, there are VARs and resellers, and there are people who specialize in security or signage or cameras or whatever. There, you know, I actually talked to somebody the other day who's primarily, you know, a copy or business machine reseller, but they own a managed service business as well. And so, you know, all of those people are welcome. And to be honest, all of the vendors who support them are welcome. I'd actually like to see more vendors serving on committees. We have a handful, but I'd like to see more. You know, the vendors have a role that's much larger than simply donating money to help us operate. That'll happen someday. But in the meantime, our community exists because we have people who help us to be successful, whether they are distributors or vendors. They sell us tools, they sell us services, they have services we can resell. And we want them to help us figure out how to make this community as strong as possible. So there's that. And there's, you know, if you run a break fix shop and you're a professional, that's totally fine. There's a lot of break fix people look down and say, oh, they're trunk slammers or whatever. But pretty much everybody on this call started out as a one-person shop. And so, you know, the question and, you know, one of the pillars is how do we create a way for people to enter this industry, learn about how to be professional in this industry, and move up and to the point where they have employees if they wish them, and that they have, you know, a long-term strategic successful business model. You know, we as a group have a lot at stake here. And if you look up, I'm just putting it in the chat. Sean asked about legislation and tracking. The National Conference of State Legislators, which is something that the Legislative Committee has been looking at, they have a way to track legislation, and you can put in keywords and so forth and track legislation in your state or in surrounding states. And there are services you can buy, Nexus, Lexus, and so forth. But that's one that NCSL is funded by the state legislators when they're trying to work together on issues. The fact that that organization exists also tells you that once they find something they like, they find a topic that they like, they share the knowledge about that, and they share the way that they have implemented things in their individual states. My last real job, which was almost 30 years ago, I worked for a company that tracked legislation, and we were a member of NCSL and worked with many of the people who are members of that. So that old piece of my past is coming back to me. But just know that that's a resource that's out there. It's free. You are paying for it. No matter what state you're in, your state and federal dollars go to fund that organization. So to Larry's question, I don't think there needs to be a different organization for people who are not MSPs. And to Amy's point, you know, we want everybody to feel welcome here.
I wanted to add something to Sean's question about, you know, is it the member's responsibility to track legislation? Ultimately, probably yes. Obviously, at this point, as a new organization, we do not have staff at all. So we don't have people to go out. I am, though, a member of Dennis Wilson's excellent committee on legislative efforts, and what the committee, and maybe you want to chime in here, Dennis, but what the committee is working on is creating and documenting a process by which we can educate our membership to go out and be those people for their local areas. So whether that, you know, in their own states, and what that looks like, how you get a meeting, how you talk to them. And so we're working toward developing that type of training. And Dennis, I see you're off mute, so if you want to say something toward that and what you're working on.
Yeah, we're providing a series of, originally we thought manuals or white papers or the like, but we decided that short videos talking to specific issues would be the best thing for our members to quickly absorb and get the information so they can use it. But basically the idea is you need to feel comfortable with the legislator when you walk in there for the very first time. And we want to provide you the answer to the questions you have in your mind of, what is it that they are looking for? What is it they want? How, they have the same kind of things that are concerns as your customers do. And we're going to provide that as quickly as possible to all of our members.
Thanks, Dennis.
And another thing along those lines is that there's so many layers of volunteers needed. Each state needs somebody who wants to sort of take charge and organize things, and every state needs people who will volunteer to go meet with a legislator, and every state needs people who, they don't have time for all that, but they will show up on a given day at a given time and be part of the crowd that just, sits in on committees and supports things and is present in on a legislative day. Luckily we have many people, and I would actually make a shout out to all the 125 present here today, but also everybody who sees this recording. If you have skills and experience in the government, whether it's city, county, state, or even federal, we would love to have you help us create educational programs. I've been amazed at the talent of people who have applied and served on the committee so far, wide-ranging talent of all kinds. So we encourage you to participate. We're trying to coordinate the volunteers, but again, we're sort of building it as it's growing. Ross asked a question about specific technologies. And I would say one of the things that's important to know about this organization is that we are trying to fill a void that we perceive to exist. And so things like training on specific new technologies, blockchain and so forth, that is not something that we are currently paying attention to. It might be someday, but this industry changes so fast that the specific training on specific technologies is something that vendors do well. Some of the distributors do. Certainly CompTIA, I would encourage everybody to, be a member of other organizations as well that actually focus on newer technologies and so forth. So, I don't see that as something we do. Along the same lines, this is not an organization where I think that we're going to be putting on webinars sponsored by your favorite vendor. All right. There's plenty of opportunities for that without this organization. We really want to be focused on service providers and helping you and you personally to feel like you're part of an organization that's moving things in the right direction, but also an industry that has some challenges that need to be addressed. And so we don't want to get sidetracked into things that other people are doing. It's not really a matter of competing per se, but just if there's not a void to be filled, then we're probably not going to be involved in things that other people are doing.
Yeah, I was looking at that same one, but one of the things that we have bantered around, and this is still amongst the committees, is our industry does have loads of training available to it. There is no lack of training in our industry. We do have a lack of people obtaining those certifications and trainings, and that may be something that we can help encourage. But as we look forward in this organization and think about what it means to be a professional member, currently it just means you were able to come up with 2 references. But sometime down the line, it may mean some continuing education credits. But I don't see us ever developing that educational material ourselves. That role's already taken. We don't want to reinvent the wheel out there. We want to fill the gaps of a membership organization and let the folks that are good at training do training.
Right. And, Felicia put a note in the chat about, trying to figure out how to eliminate people who are unscrupulous. And she says, you know, educating your clients, having a chat with them and saying, you know, this is what actually is going on and this is what you need to know. It allows them to have the knowledge they need to filter out bad actors to some degree. You know, clients are never going to know everything you know about technology. It's not their job, and it's why you exist. So, you know, that you can only go so far. And she mentions contracts also, to go through the contracts with clients. And Larry says, what do you think about the idea of NSITSP offering a contract review service? Again, so that's something that there are attorneys who do that. So
my insurer actually offers that service. So it's out there already, but whether the important part that I think that isn't being filled, that perhaps this organization can fill in the future, is to make it more clear to the consumer what it is that they're purchasing and who they're purchasing it from, right? There are different levels of expertise, and right now we're sort of a black box when it comes to consumers deciding between two firms, or there are no standards that they can set us up against. There's no, and they don't know anything about IT. That's why they're hiring us in the first place. So to even give them some idea, like, for example, you could go to a CPA, you could go to an EA, you could go to a bookkeeper, but you know that you're going to get and have different expectations from each of those different types of people in the accounting industry. We don't have that. There's no way for the consumer to know that about the different types of people that we have in our industry. And they should be able to, there should be a way for them to make that informed decision to understand what that means. And I think that could be a role that our industry can fill.
Felicia
Our
also
membership
says,
organization can fill, rather.
yeah, she says that educating buyers is a key thing. So along those lines, Amy, I could totally see us educating, the media and buyers, that, because I'm finally tuned into the response of the media when there's a ransomware attack, so the next big one that comes out, pay attention to what the media are saying about you and your industry, because they say things like, well, this must be really poorly written software. No, that's not true. Or they question, why do you use such dangerous tools that can be abused in such a way? Why would anybody outsource their IT? And so those are the kinds of questions where Dennis talked about putting together educational videos regarding legislators and their staff and people who are going to help on the legislative side. But we also can do the same thing for buyers, people who own businesses across the world who need to have IT people. So far what they know about IT is they watch movies and they see that there's one IT person who knows everything. And that's true whether you're running Jurassic Park or a spaceship. So, the world is a little more complicated than that. Larry, go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to make a couple of points. In 1988, we wrote our first support contract. And the state of California, the Board of Equalization, came after us for taxes and penalties because, first of all, they thought it was a product and that we weren't taxing it. And secondly, they thought that we should be reporting it as income even though we hadn't delivered any services. They didn't understand the concept that somebody was paying us a fee for a future service. And we went to law firms in Santa Rosa, San Francisco, and Sacramento, trying to get them to help us legally clarify what we were doing so that the banks would understand, so that we could get the bank to support us with the IRS and the state governing agencies. So what's your point, Larry? My point is that lawyers don't know a damn thing about technology unless they went to law school after they left the technology industry. They don't look at it the same way we do. And well, with all due respect, Amy, there are lawyers out there that specialize in this. The pace at which our industry changes is a pace that lawyers simply cannot keep up with. They have all they can do just trying to watch case law and case precedent. I think this problem is much bigger than anything we can put into a short statement or a short observation, which leads me to my primary point. This is where a code of ethics can play a major, major role. And this is the next deliverable on our plate. And I want to remind everybody, if you have an interest in participating in our development of the code of ethics, we really want you to come on board, or at least submit an application to join us, which is on the website. This is going to be a very big deal, and it's going to be very important. And I'm really anxiously looking forward to the process. This discussion over the last 20 minutes has brought out some very valuable points that I think we'll need to address in that code of ethics.
Very good.
So
Thank you.
Larry, just a point of clarification, when I said that contract review exists, it's through my insurance company. In fact, in order to be insured and to not suffer some of the huge price increases that a lot of others did, they actually reviewed our contract to make sure that we weren't over-promising and under-delivering and all that kind of stuff, and that the modern day liability restrictions were in there and stuff like that. So that's really what I was referring to. So the insurance company has a legal specialist department that reviews our standard part of the contract.
Right.
Also,
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that with regard to all the legal stuff, one of the things that we want to do is to make friends with the insurance industry, because I think we have a lot of needs in common. In particular, if we can figure out how to address liability so that you can go in and do a job and not be worried that you're going to get sued for $1.7 million. The famous case from last year, if you look at it, this lawsuit was over a phishing attack, and no amount of me having a good firewall is going to stop you from wiring $1.7 million to somebody, right? So, there's a lot of education and there's a lot of liability. And so I think that we do have a lot in common with the insurance companies, and they already have a great lobbying organization that I hope we become friends with.
Carl, there's a few people with their hands raised there. Keith, Frank, Josh. Not sure who was
Josh
first.
was first, I think.
Can I just make one quick point?
Sure.
There's an interesting relationship between the legal industry and the insurance industry. Lawyers don't want anything that's specific. They want to be able to argue around the edges, and insurance companies want absolute specificity. So we ran into this in the late 80s, when you integrate those two professions, they're there's an inherent conflict between them, like dogs and cats, because you have one side that wants details and one side that wants vagueness. So the point is, you've got to be very careful about this and don't lean too much on any one resource. Thanks. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I got to run to actually another security committee meeting, but I will say that, Carl, you talked about placing blame, and that in the last month, our county and our city school district have been hammered by ransomware. And the two TV stations that I've worked with before to do stuff, they both called me. They wanted commentary. They wanted me to place blame before there was any details out about what had happened. And I begged off both times, explained to them that it's irresponsible, it won't be helpful. But that's what's happening with legislation that I can see, is that they're looking for ways to hold people culpable and place blame. And that's where we really need to be involved, because as you pointed out, there's no amount of technology that can protect against somebody opening the front door. And that's what I'm seeing. That's all I have to say. Thank you for the invitation. I've got to run to another show.
Sure. Well, and along those lines, the whole thing of training the media or having resources available so that when the media come to you, it'd be great if you could go to our website, download some clips and say, there's the core background information you need to know. I will be happy to provide you with the 7-second, local quote from the local IT service provider. Those are the kinds of resources that don't currently exist. Essentially, when a story comes out, our voice doesn't get heard. And so it'd be great if it were. Frank.
Yeah, hi, Karl. Thanks for taking my hand. I did post in the chat. I'm with a vendor. The product's called Nodeware. It's a vulnerability management, and we've been doing for 6 months now, once a month, maybe sometimes twice a month, an educational webinar series, very focused on educating SMBs on the ins and outs of cybersecurity, where to start, the insurance elements, and all different kinds of things. And I put the link on there if you're interested to join. And actually, Josh was on one last week where it was more focused on the use of the tool. But we've had him and Dave Sobel. We've had folks from CIST and NIST, and all the acronyms. All the cyber acronyms participating. So it's an interesting thing, and MSPs can send it to their customers and get them educated, right? Because that's, as you said, that's kind of a big roadblock there. So if anybody's interested, they can follow up with me separately.
Good. And you might repost that just so it refreshes and folks can find it super easy.
You bet. And the other thing that we somebody just did, Sean. Thank you, Sean. If on the insurance side, we've been working with some Transmosis, Cowbell, Trava that are really doing an interesting service for MSPs, where it's kind of helping their customers identify what the risks are so they can apply for insurance right before you can even get to that point. And so we're working with integrating our product into them. So it's a service that you as an MSP could deliver, add the value of the insurance, get them smart beforehand so they can actually be accepted into a term. So again, there's some other information on that. You can reach out to me.
Great, thank you. Also, just a side note, in my membership community, we did a little chat one time about examining your insurance policies. I discovered in the middle of my insurance policy, my insurance company offers me a whole series of educational materials and things I can go through, and stuff that I can learn to make myself more secure. And your insurance policy might cover the exact same thing, and your client's insurance policies might have the same thing. The insurance industry has a real interest in how we respond to cybersecurity and how we prevent it and so forth. And I think they kind of mostly acknowledge they don't know what to do, so they've outsourced a lot of this stuff. But all that education is useful.
I think it's always true that an educated customer is a good customer. So
yeah, I'd like to say from experience, because I'm an adjunct, Stanford, for one, has programs that specialize in technology and law. I also teach one at Caltech. So there is IP attorneys, there are attorneys that specialize in technology. They are not ignorant to what we do. I just want, that's something to be very, very clear about. If you look at Stanford program in law, science and technology, there's also the Hoover Institute. There's people that specialize in that. As far as the media and legislature, I just want to make 2 quick points. There's a lot of talk in the chat that talks about how do we keep track of legislation and then act. To me, that's too late. You need to spend the time, invest the time up front, develop the report, do the networking, and become a resource to legislators so you're involved in the process, not reacting once a bill gets published. Same for media. Being a liberal, that's a joke. I hate profiling. Media will listen if you establish yourself as an expert with some background, and if you can speak intelligently, you can guide them from their preconceived prejudice to where they need to be educated. So let's not broad brush that the media is our enemy. We need to develop those relationships. And I think that's just the only point I need to trying to make is we need to not profile all these groups. We need to develop relationships and establish them and nurture them. They're ongoing. So we become a resource to guide them through a tough time. And take it from the legislature's perspective, they're getting businesses raising their hand and saying, I got attacked. I thought I had everything. We're forcing them to react by being not involved. And that was my only point. And I do have to run to a security committee as well. But that was it. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, sir. You know, the thing about the media, somebody had posted up that they like to create their own stuff. That's true for some media, but you know, when we first started out, I engaged Sharon Sobel, who is a video producer, about, you know, how do we create a whole package that's sort of ready to go, and, you know, background information and so forth. And she gave me so much information. This is a standard thing that many organizations, companies, and associations do, that they basically create resources so that the local news reporter can go and take, well, here's what this is, and they explain something, and then they chop in some local person to quote. And so we can have influence on how the media sees us. And, you know, with some media training that we might someday be able to provide, I mean, we really could have several people who are the voice of their local networks when something happens. I mean, if you get in somebody's Rolodex, it goes a long ways. And again, I don't want to say that the media are enemies or anything like that. That's not what I meant to imply. But, you know, they've got a void of knowledge. And so they, you know, when they have a story they're handed, they got to figure out what to say. And as you know, what Josh sort of hinted at, my experience has always been the first 24 hours of a news cycle, almost all of the information on a story is wrong, right? Because they're like, oh, here's something going on. I mean, this happened just the other day with the inflation report. The inflation report was out like 6 seconds, and they asked somebody on Bloomberg to comment on it. And he was just trying to read and make commentary at the same time. And, you know, there was no analysis there at all. So we need to be able to give people resources on the next time something happens, because that something is going to happen. And we all know it. It's just a matter of time. Other comments or questions?
I shot you an email on it, but you know this conference was full, right? I tried to get on before 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's not full anymore.
Well, that's why I'm on.
Yeah. We upped the level significantly during the call. So
yeah,
thank you.
yes, I looked at the licensing and saw we had.
Yeah, and if he's got any questions, have him give me a call and I'll be happy to explain what we're trying to do.
Eric, I wanted to say, this is Larry.
Okay, you're welcome.
When we first started writing code back in the early 90s, we used to have a saying that you can't make code foolproof because fools are ingenious. You can't find ways to make sure problems don't exist in technology. This is just another one of those technology experiences that we thought we had covered and didn't. And couldn't keep going.
not a problem. Just I'll go back and look at the recording. I'm just sorry I was not able to get on right away.
Yeah, we took care of it as quick as we could, but basically I looked and saw that we had 500 licenses for the webinar, but I didn't see that we only had 100 for the meeting. So, but now we have 500 for the meeting.
I was hoping that meant that, you know, you were at 500 on the initial call.
So the last item on every checklist is update the checklist.
That's why you got to check every box, Karl, every box.
Yes, first do the thing, then check the box.
All right, I think our questions are dwindling. I mean, they do definitely revolve around the two main topics that we're after in this organization right now, and there are going to be others in the future, right? You know, I think that continuing education is a big piece. I think customer education, giving our members tools to be able to differentiate themselves in the market. I know that has always been a problem that we've all struggled with, right? You have one firm that comes in and the next firm looks like it. I know when I consciously went out to grow my business a few years ago, you know, I was met with people that knew the term MSP, which we had decided to hold the business where it was for a number of years. And so I hadn't been out there talking to potential clients in a while, but then it's like, okay, let's double the size of this business. So we went out and did that. And I found myself in meetings with potential clients that were like, oh yeah, we've already met with 3 other MSPs. We just need to see your list of things you're providing in your price per seat. Like they didn't want to have a conversation because they just assumed that we were all the same. And, you know, we are not all the same by any stretch. And so, you know, having those conversations is important. And we need the marketplace to know that there are different types of providers out there. And I do see that as an important part of this mission of this organization, to educate not only the media, but to educate our business community so that they know what they're buying.
100% agreed. So I just want to encourage everybody who has not bought into the professional membership that you go ahead and do that. If you have questions about the letters of reference, there's actually a post on the news section of the site answering. It's an FAQ on the letters of reference. So take a look at that. And obviously you can email me or email Amy at any time, and we will be able to help you in any way we can. Also, if you're interested in serving on the board, that application is open for 2 more days. So I guess Friday at 5-ish my time, we'll close those out. So if you're interested, go ahead and fill out that. And with luck, we will have lots and lots of good stuff to report. I think, did we decide on doing on meeting quarterly?
Yep. We're going to do these meetings quarterly to keep everybody up to date on what's happening to your membership organization.
And, you know, final note on serving, I actually talked to somebody yesterday that I sort of talked him out of applying for the board of directors. He was interested in, you know, something that would have a little prestige and would improve his career. And that's all fine. That's a legitimate reason to serve. But I would like it to be, you know, below your first reason. I'd like your first reason for serving because you want to make this industry better and stronger and, you know, a key piece of the success of all the people who are in this profession. So we would love to have you serve, but I would like service to be the first thing in your mind rather than self-service. Cool. Anything else? Excellent. Thank you all for being here. Join the social media and, you know, help us keep growing and growing. And with luck, we will have more licensing issues at 1,000 members next time.
That'd be awesome. Carl, can you make sure we capture this chat? There's some important things in there that we need to follow up on.
The chat will be posted and along with the recording, and we do, you know, we put captions on the recording so that the people who are visually impaired can access it. So that will all be posted, and Kara says within 24 hours. So,
and we'll get this recording out, posted up to all the socials too, because I know we had a lot of people register that unfortunately couldn't get in because of our mishap, but we'll get that out to everybody.
Also, we have a YouTube channel, so that's where this recording is going to live. Even though we're going to link to it from our site, it will actually be on our YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to that, go subscribe to that as well. All right. Thank you all for being here. And if you want to capture the chat before we close, just click on the 3 little dots to the right of the chat window, and there's an option that says Save Chat, and you will have your local file version of this. But trust me, we'll post it. All right. With that, I will go ahead and put this to bed, and with luck, we will see you online. Thank you all.
I'll see for you tomorrow.
Yes, yes. I'll see many of you in meetings. All right. Thank you all.
Bye.